Hello, everybody, and welcome to coverage of our first quarterfinals for the Premodern Fall Brawl top 8. We're in the quarterfinals. I'm Michael Hoyp. I'm joined today by Mike Arnold. How's it going, Mike?
I'm doing well.
All right, so we have a matchup between Mono Blue Stiflenought, which is I feel like it is recently been the most popular Stiflenought list. I see it popping up in top eights a lot, and so the people that have been playing it have been very high on it. So that is an exciting deck. And then the other deck, which has been named FernGully, which I hadn't even looked at this list until tonight, and it is wild, and it is right up your alley, Mike. It is like the perfect deck that everything it is doing is something that I feel like you've tried in the pre-modern space. So you must be very excited to see this deck.
Yeah, except it's trying to do it all at the same time,
Yeah.
which is just like a big firework, display right here. But yeah, I just posted my my secret rock list, which I just played the monthly with. But if you take my list and you take out the natural order package and replace them with some Balefs and Blastoderms, it's just like a normal rock list. And then in the Super Gauntlet, I'm playing a Zombie Infestation Contamination list. Yeah, it's almost like Kyle just threw those things together, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing to behold.
Yeah, so before we get too much into the decks, I'm going to bring up some information about the players as we get to know them. And we'll talk about the decks a little bit in here, and then we'll kind of break down the decks and how we think the matchup's going to play out. So first we have some information on Álvaro Galindo. So he is from Santiago, Chile. He went 7-1. Actually, all of the top 8 went 7-1. He ended up in the 4th seed based on breakers. He is playing the Mono Blue Stiflenought list. He had said that he likes his matchups against Sly and Goblins and feels that it's solid against Blue White Tide and Elves. And if there's a deck that I feel like those are 4 of maybe like the 5 most popular and powerful decks in Premodern, if you feel like you have pretty good matchups, I feel like your deck is pretty well placed in the metagame. So might be something for me to look at if those are the good matchups for the decks. He says the deck does struggle with discard and cheap removal. Anything that can kind of break up the combination of your Stifle plus Dreadnought package can be a little bit difficult. And he had noted that his sideboard MVP are the Hydroblast. So a little bit more about this list. So we said, why did you... Oh, okay, now I got it up. Why did you choose this deck? He says, I like mono blue decks, and this tempo build is simply awesome. It's funny, like I had this template when I was making the slides, and Sven Lutz had played Mono Blue Stiflenought in the Spring Fling, and when I brought it back up using the template, it was almost the exact same line. Like Sven had said the exact same thing. Like, I like mono blue tempo decks, and this one's really fitting it. So it's funny that like 2 people have come to the same idea of like why they like that deck, just because we're almost the exact same wordings.
I also enjoy mono blue tempo decks, but he basically took my Merfolk deck and replaced the bad cards with the Stiflenought package.
Sure.
And yeah, did very well with it.
Yeah, so I guess instead of playing like a lot of different smaller threats, you're kind of going all in on one very powerful threat. So.
Oh yeah.
Would you make any changes to the deck? He said, I made the mistake of swapping 2 Cursed Totem for Hibernation. He said it's a really bad idea. So I guess the Hibernations didn't play out they wanted. I'm guessing that has to do more for the Elves matchup, because that seems like the matchup where you would want either Cursed Totem or Hibernation kind of thing. But I could see maybe just the overlap. Like in this matchup, Hibernation seems like it will be okay. So
yeah, when I saw that comment, I'm like, yeah, you're gonna thank yourself for running Contamination here, or excuse me, Hibernation here.
Yeah, he said that his most exciting moment from the Swiss rounds, he said the match against Aaron Stasis was brutal. I'm not sure which list or person that was referring to. I didn't check that out. Favorite hobbies outside of Magic? He said, I like seafood. I don't know if that's a joke, because he called I can't remember what he called the list. It was something like a reference to shrimp or something. I think because the Dreadnought kind of looks like a shrimp, I think was the idea. And he said people should root for him because he's the only Latin American in the top 8. So the one thing I do love about like the Latin American, I feel like they're always like super supportive of their countrymen, or like, and so it's always cool to see the people cheering them on. So I do always enjoy that. Now we'll move on to Kyle. So he's from Boise, Idaho. again, he had a 7-1 record. He ended up at the 5 seed. And so he's playing this FernGully deck that he has named, and it has to do with the contamination and kind of the forest theme, and there's some elves and whatnot. So very very cute name based on the movie. He says he kind of just said like the matchups felt like pretty similar to the Rock, though it has some edges where contamination can steal some wins if a deck's mana base is really weak to that. But I mean, I guess if you're in a good place, I feel like the Rock doesn't have like too many awful matchups. So if you do get kind of a little bit of benefit that where you just get some free wins, then maybe this deck is a new direction to take the Rock in. He said the sideboard MVP is Pernicious Deed, which doesn't really surprise me. That's usually one of the cards that I really like in black-green decks. So, and then a little bit more about this deck. He said, I love brewing semi-competitive nonsense in Premodern, and he's been really obsessed with Contamination. I feel like this is maybe only almost a profile for you, Mike. So, because I know when I talk to you, you're always sending lists with Contamination. So, yeah, it's a fun card to brew around.
Yep.
He has some changes that he would make after running it through. You can see them on the screen. If you are looking to take his list and maybe make some adjustments. He did say exciting moments. He used Elvish Spirit Guide to kind of get a surprise deed activation for one more than maybe it was present on the board.
Nice.
His favorite hobbies outside, he plays in a local baseball league, plays Dungeons and Dragons, and then whatever his 9-year-old son is into. And he says people should root for him because Premodern needs more spicy nonsense, which I think everyone can get behind. So,
oh yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the decks. So, the first up, I have the Mono Blue Stiflenought list, and pretty clean list. I mean, I guess this is pretty stock from what I've seen. The core of the deck is Phyrexian Dreadnought, and you combine it with Vision Charm or Stifle so that you get to keep your 12/12 Trampler. And the rest is a supporting cast of card draw and counter magic, and that's pretty streamlined in what it's trying to do. Do you want to add anything? Is there anything, if you looked at the list, that kind of stood out, or is it kind of what we have come to expect with the Mono Blue Stiflenought?
Yeah, and I mean, even though it's like what we've come to expect, you have to give Álvaro props. He's really worked very hard on this list. We consider it stock, but that's because Álvaro has put in the work for it. Before, like the Mono Blue lists were more of like a control element. You have, Nev's Disc, and sometimes you had Manlands and Landstill, that type of thing. But Álvaro's, just moved away from that, and he's gone, just with cantrips, protection, and the Dreadnought package, and that's really it. So very lean, mean, type of list. Gotta love the snow-covered islands right there. We don't see enough snow-covered islands,
Yeah.
Or just the snow-covered lands in general in Premodern for how beautiful they are.
Yeah. All right, and then I will bring up the other list. So this one's a little bit harder to digest. There's a lot more going on here. So this is the FernGully deck from Kyle. So do you kind of want to talk about what's going on here, since this is probably a lot closer to your wheelhouse than anybody else?
Yeah, where do you start off here? I mean, you've got a couple deeds in here. You've got your 3 Cabal Therapies, 3 Duress. You have 3 natural orders and a small natural order package. I mean, the main ones being Symbiotic Worm and the Nishoba. But you can get Deranged Hermit in a pinch. Sometimes it's good to get the Deranged Hermit. I like that. And he also, like, he's got Wirewood Herald, which is a really good creature to be able to sacrifice for a natural order because it will replace itself. Even if Álvaro has a counterspell for the natural order, if he sacrifices the Herald, he's going to get another creature to hand. And with that, he's able to easily get an Elvish Scrapper, which Kyle's running one of the main deck. I think that's going to be really important right here. He probably would have a full 4 in his playset if he had the choice, because I don't see a lot of other removal here main deck for Kyle. Recurring Nightmare, a Corpse Dance in here, which is not something you typically see in rock lists, right? Or something I've considered in my own spicy endeavors. But yeah, Corpse Dance, and then in the sideboard, yeah, you've got the Pernicious Deeds are only in the board at this point, unless I'm seeing things incorrectly. and otherwise got a couple naturalizes. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on here. The Elvish Apparition, I'd like to ask Kyle some questions about, what that one's doing in the list. But otherwise, yeah, he's looking to get, um, a Contamination into play and to kind of lock the opponent out, hopefully with a Symbiotic Worm, because that Symbiotic Worm is going to be able to lock up the opponent, for 8 turns.
Yeah. The other thing kind of to look at is with Contamination, if you're not able to get like the natural order off, just having like Wirewood Herald, if you have a way to make green mana with like a Birds of Paradise or an Elf, or maybe even a Wall of Roots, you're able to chain like Wirewood Herald, sacking to get another Wirewood Herald, and then cast it to keep that Contamination around.
True.
So just with that easy 2-drop, you're able to like keep that Contamination on for a while. And then if you do find like Recurring Nightmare or Corpse Dance, then you're able to get like that back with the black mana and kind of keep that lock going. So that I think it seems like a really cool interaction with the Herald and the Contamination. So
Yeah, I'm really wondering why I didn't include at least one Verdant Force, just because Verdant Force will, it'll feed Contamination, forever, right there. So Manos Kokinis recently won the Beard Brothers Open with a Pattern Rector list, running Verdant Force and Contamination in there. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear Kyle's thoughts about what all went into this.
All right, that's all I have really right now. I think everyone here is probably pretty excited to see this FernGully deck in action. So how about we jump down in the match and get things started?
All right, let's see it.
All right, if you want to let the players know that we can begin, we have Álvaro on the left. He is the higher seed, so he gets to choose to play. Kyle on the right with the FernGully deck. Looks like he mulliganed twice down to 5. So just to note, this is a best of 5 match. So the first 2 games will be without sideboard, and then beyond that, then they'll have access to the 15 cards. So, all right, chat. Let's hear who you're cheering for. I'm just gonna make sure. Okay, yes, my chat is showing on screen. So Alvaro's gonna kick things off with just an island and pass a turn, and then Kyle has a Fyndhorn Elves. And then end of turn, Álvaro will cast an Opt. So it seems like pretty standard openings for both players. They're kind of like one's developing his mana, the other is kind of smoothing out the draw. So
yeah, we'll see how fast that the Dreadnought's able to come down here for Álvaro. But yeah, with Álvaro not running Lotus Petals, he does not have any outs to a Contamination once it hits the board.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think it from that way. Yeah, I can't think of. Yeah, I think you're right. So, the other thing to note is like once a Dreadnought is resolved, I don't think there are many good answers in the main deck for Kyle to do much. Is that?
Yeah, Kyle's basically running no removal. The naturalizers are in the sideboard. He doesn't have anything like Vendettas or Edicts, Smothers, nothing like that. In his deck, no Deeds either in the main deck. So yeah, it's really all up to, I think, Contamination here in games 1 and 2 for Kyle. And I think it's beneficial for Kyle here to have the 5-game match because he has a slightly, he has one more match where he's able to bring in the sideboard.
So Birds of Paradise is added. He also has a Wirewood Herald. So things are getting set up in the sense that, like, I guess natural order could be on the table for Kyle. He doesn't have to worry about counter spells. There are just a number of counter spells, and looks like he's got bigger things to worry about right now. An immediate problem of a 12/12. So
yeah, Kyle just putting down his cards right there. You saw it. That's not what you want to see. That's not a show of confidence there. So we'll
because
see
if Álvaro just kind of fades the early disruption spells like the Duresses and the Cabal Therapies, I don't think he has much to fear once this is resolved. So
yeah, we'll need to ask Kyle after the match, did he mulligan just because they were unplayable hands, or was he looking for just any interaction, that he could get? So I mean, I think the best play for Kyle here is if you were to natural order for an Ashoba and to kind of make a race of it, because the Ashoba can,
Yeah.
you know, you're actually coming out ahead in that race. You're dealing 7, gaining 7, and so that brings the effective damage of Dreadnought down to 5.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it ever would come up, but the gaining life ability is a triggered ability that could be stifled. So that could be interesting.
Yep, no lifelink here.
We do have a contamination.
So what could... Elvish Scrapper is too slow because he does get a trigger off of Herald next turn. But so probably your best bet is to go get a Deranged Hermit and soak up 9 of that damage from the Dreadnought and hope you have something else as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. What he really needs is a Viridian Shaman, but we only have Octavia Orangutan in this format, so...
Yeah, absolutely. In one of the pre-modern events, I was able to run Survival Elves with the
Elvish Reclamation Sage, yeah.
Yeah, Reclamation Sage, and that was just unfair.
Yeah.
That was quite silly. So yeah, with the contamination down, Alvaro's really, he can't make any meaningful plays. I believe he's just attacking at this point.
The biggest thing he can do is he can foil still, right?
Yeah.
And wait, so does contamination turn him into swamps, or are you still able to gush?
No, he's still able to gush.
Okay.
So everything remains the same. It just replaces the all the mana that's produced with just a single black mana. Yeah. Neither of them run like soul lands, which would change the amount that's produced. But so it's just all black mana. City Brass is still gonna ping Kyle when that happens. So let's see what he's thinking. You're getting tutoring up with the Wirewood Herald. Can you think of anything else besides Deranged Hermit?
The problem is, like, how is he winning then? Like, I agree that, like, it's the only thing I could think of that, like, does anything. Could Caller of the Claw, like, do something? I don't know, like, that you are able to sack enough permanents somehow, that you get enough tutus? I don't know.
Yeah, so unfortunately he doesn't have the toughness here on the board. If he had like a Wall of Roots or something like that, that would actually be perfect because he could say, for instance, he tutors up the Caller, he gets the wall, he plays the Wall of Roots. You have to trample over the Wall of Roots, so Kyle's going to have enough life total left, and then he flashes in Caller for 8, or no, excuse me, for 4 creatures. That's 8 power off the bears, and then you have the Caller itself. And maybe that does something, but...
Well, Caller doesn't trigger off tokens dying, right?
Correct, but it would trigger off the... So if you had the Wall of Roots plus the Caller, so Wall died,
the blocking ones,
and,
okay.
Yeah, and Elf, so... But really right here, he just wants... Oh, and yeah, he's untapping at this point, so that's... I was saying, Deranged Hermit plus a Scrapper would be what he would want.
Yeah, if that contamination came down a little bit earlier,
Yep.
or if he had a way to give it haste, like the Elvish Scrapper, but
no Concordant Crossroads in this deck, sadly.
No. Yeah, so this is a block just to stay alive.
Yeah, now that Hermit has been used, I guess he could draw like a Recurring Nightmare off the... Okay.
A Llanowar Waste? If he could draw a Llanowar Waste.
Yeah, that's not going to do it, sadly.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is it's really how quick that contamination lock can come down. I think that's what the pre-boarded games are going to come down to, because there's just not that many pieces of interaction that Kyle really can threaten Kyle with, or Alvaro with. So yeah, so I mean, pretty normal for the Dreadnoughts, like in the pre-boarded games, to be much more aggressive in terms of finding their combo and trying to assemble it. Just because decks aren't always set up to combat a 12 on turn 2. So I'm guessing I wouldn't be surprised if the second game is similar, though. I don't know how quickly like Kyle can set up the contamination lock, because he does have 4 copies of it, so it's not like he has to like tutor for it like some other lists I've seen where you're just kind of playing one and like enlightened tutors to find it. He's just got a full 4, and it's pretty easy for him just to naturally set up this quasi lock. And maybe it's not like an infinite lock, but like it's at least will buy him a lot of time.
Yeah, so for Kyle, like what he wants to see here, being on the play this time, and being on the play will be really important. I would definitely want to have, some discard spells available, at least one. So ideally, he's got a discard spell plus some type of ramp, and then somewhere to go from there, whether it be a natural order or contamination. You want one of those payoff spells, so that's probably the most ideal and realistic hand that he could expect.
And it's really not even asking that much. Like he's got like 6 discard spells, a ton of like mana elves or wall of roots or whatnot, and then he's got 4 contamination and 3 natural order. So like it's 3 different types of cards that he wants, but like it's very redundant in what his deck's trying to do.
Yeah, we're not going to magical Christmas land, for that type of hand. It's quite realistic, but sometimes you don't even get those hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if players think that they have to wait at all.
All right. Well, it looks like Kyle's leading off with a swamp here, so we're all
good.
We're underway. Looks like they both kept a 7. No discard spell from Kyle though.
Okay.
He also doesn't need to run out anything exactly on turn 1, as there's no pedal threatening the immediate. So we're going to go with the therapy, which makes sense. I mean, that's one more card.
And it plays around Daze as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, he turn 1 Daze would, or turn 1 therapy would play around.
Oh yeah. If he didn't have it, Okay, never mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being on the play is a good way to play around Daze.
Yeah. You just named Dreadnought here, right?
Yeah, I think you've got to name Dreadnought.
I mean, I can see maybe like you have certain hands that like you are going to name like a card like Counterspell or Foil to try and resolve like a lock, but I think in general, I think I would probably name Dreadnought.
Yeah.
We see a very... I guess it has the Stifle. So there's a reactive hand. There's 2 counterspells, a Stifle, a Misdirection, an Opt, Intuition, and an Island.
So do you Misdirection the therapy here?
You might have to, yeah.
You might.
So the way this works is it's just changing the target, but Kyle's still casting the spell. So I think Kyle names the card. Yeah.
Correct, and he reveals it. Okay. Okay. He's got his source of green mana there. And gonna go for the birds while he can.
Yeah, he's gonna, since he doesn't have any green mana, he's gonna do it when there's not any counter magic available. So.
Mm-hmm. So really, from both players, it's just a matter of top decking here, and this is where the blue decks really are able to get a lot of value, is that they have all the cantrips to be able to dig. And we're going to go for the immediate therapy.
Okay.
All right, I can get behind that.
Are you taking a Stifle, or are you just taking the 2 counter spells?
I think if your plan is to do the contamination, okay, he's going to go with the Stifle. Okay.
The one thing that like is now you've cut yourself off green, and it's not like you have any like clock So the game is going to go a lot longer. That's the only thing that, like, I mean, it's not like that bird was doing that much anyways, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. We do see, this is a Plague Witch. Is that what it's called?
I forget exactly what it is. It's a spell shaper. It's from Nemesis, and it's able to basically nausea with the spell shaper ability.
Yeah, Plague Witch. Yep. Not very good
I
at
love that art.
not very good at combating a dreadnought, I guess, but
No.
it is good
Not
about
unless
like
you meant.
killing like opposing mana elves, which I think that's the
Yeah.
idea. Is like if you're under contamination lock, this is a way to
Yep.
kill mana elves that would get them out of it.
Yeah, that's definitely something you need to consider when you're brewing around contamination. Yeah, there's a lot of ways around it. Of course, there's several decks which don't care about contamination at all, and then there's other decks which are pretty easy to play around it. The mana dorks, being one of them, mana rocks, being the other main ones.
It also is just a creature to sacrifice to Cabal Therapy. So
Yep, there we go. That's enough.
the first one is countered by the counterspell, and then the flashback. He will.
Well, he played the
Oh,
therapy first, and that was hard countered, and then he flashed it back
and
with
then
something
I
else
think
named.
I
Okay.
think Álvaro is gushing in response.
Okay.
Maybe not. Maybe the timing I'm off, but because I didn't see an additional card go to the graveyard. But
Yeah, I have not either. I mean, it's possible with there only being one counterspell that. Okay. Yep. There it is.
okay, not something that Kyle's excited to see.
And Kyle's just gonna scoop him up there. Yep.
All right, well, not too surprising how those pre-sideboard games go. So let's go back to look at the decks and see
Yeah.
how the
Valor's
sideboarding changes things.
That's some powerful magic right there. Just
Yes.
gotta say, to be able to gush right into your combo.
All right,
I didn't think I was that good of a wizard.
I have the FernGully list up. So there's 2 Pernicious Deeds, 2 Naturalize. Bone Shredder doesn't hit artifacts, so that's unfortunate for Kyle. Those are really the ones that stand out to me.
So you're the rock expert here. Do you bring in Haunting Echoes?
I do not.
Okay.
I think like just a 5. There's too many counter spells. Like I don't want to spend 5 mana on a card that like I don't think it does enough. I mean, I guess the idea is if you're getting to 5 mana and casting it, like there's probably a Dreadnought in the graveyard, and you're probably just gonna win there. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of it, but maybe that's the angle you're gonna take. Maybe that's something you could try.
Yeah, Kyle's got other ways of locking up the game, so I don't think you need Haunting Echoes. But whenever I sideboard, I always have like the snap, snap ones in, and there's other I always put like in my maybe pile. So it's something that I might consider, especially if there's other bad cards you just want to take out. But I definitely like the Naturalizers and the Pernicious Deeds. Those have to come in right there. Spike Feeder, I don't think necessarily gains enough life. That's the other one that I might look at. Well Wisher, again, if you're able to get Well Wisher going, that might be able to buy you a turn, but that's if you get it going. So I'm taking out the Plague Witch right away. The Elvish Aberration, I'm not sure if that deserves a spot. And then from there,
Is the Lyrist? There's no enchantments that are relevant, are there?
no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't believe so. So Lyrist can come right out. Call of the Claw, I think, is worth keeping in. Recurring Nightmare and Corpse Dance. Can you count on the game going that long to be able to make either of those relevant, or do you really need those? I'm not quite sure, but
I can see him just cutting the natural order package because it's like it's 4 mana, so it's like very vulnerable to all the counter magic. You have to commit so much,
sure.
and just like there, it seems difficult to resolve. I could see him cutting that package as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So I did play against Mono Blue Dreadnought this month with my secret rock list. Now, granted, they're quite different. It's quite different from Kyle's list, but I lost game 3, and partly because I was not aggressive enough. I was too scared of natural ordering
Okay.
into the counterspell deck, and then when I finally did draw like a therapy or something, the Dreadnought had already come down, I believe, or no, I don't believe the Dreadnought came down. But yeah, I checked his hand. He had 4 cards in hand, and they're all like impulse, opt, sleight of hand,
Okay.
and just like nothing. And so my therapy missed, and then he was able to use those cantrips to actually dig and find the combo. And it was the second combo of the game. I was able to answer the first one pretty quickly, but yeah, because I wasn't aggressive enough and closed out the game, he was just able to dig out of it. Which is the strength I think of the mono blue deck is it's cut all like the card disadvantage, type things with the Lotus Petal and the Limdol's Vault and Light and Tutor. It's not running any of that. It's just, yeah, it's the only card disadvantage that it's running really is the Stiflenought package and foil.
Okay. Yeah, I have Alvaro's list up. So cards that like I could see Boomerang, Hibernation, or Null. Those are the only cards I think that have merit, but none of them like really change that much. Like I guess the biggest issue is like, are you scared of contamination? The contamination lock, and I feel like that's how you're gonna lose most games. I don't know like if Hibernation is like I don't know how much are you worried about the natural order plan.
Mhm.
But I mean, maybe it's something you bring in. It's just kind of like what cards do you cut? Like, because I feel like you're giving up so much just by like diluting what your deck's trying to do. So
Yeah, so I mean, I'd look first at the cards which are kind of bad, before doing anything else. Daze could be a consideration. He does have, plenty of, mana dorks to be able to play around Daze, and especially since Alvaro's on the draw here, he might have done that. But yeah, we're starting game 1 off anyway, so Kyle's got the birds, and then Alvaro, his turn 1 was just an island go. Now we get a Duress here from Kyle.
all right, so Kyle's gonna see a Portent, a Boomerang, a Counterspell, a Stifle, and a Null. So we do see an Annul as a sideboard card. There was one Boomerang in the main, so that's not necessarily that that came in. He's gonna take a Stifle. Okay, but looking to disrupt the quick Dreadnought, so I can get behind that.
Yeah, it could also tell us a little bit about Kyle's hand. What he kept right there. He didn't take the counterspell, so he might have some removal, or he might not have removal in his hand, or multiple ways to be able to answer the Dreadnought. I think if like Kyle had a natural order hand or something like that, where he's very proactive with like contamination, if he had a hand which could lock it up pretty quickly, you're like snap taking the counterspell there. Whereas if he's taking the stifle, he doesn't have that type of hand. It's going to be more reactive.
Okay, so Portent is resolved. I didn't see it come down. I'm like, what is Alvaro thinking about? But yeah, Portent was the reason. So
Mm-hmm. And there's a Herald. Do we have a therapy? No.
we could have a contamination though, because if that
Yep.
comes down, that's gonna keep Alvaro from doing much for the next 4 turns at least. Because with the Birds of Paradise, you're just able to get another Herald and cast one, get another Herald. I think in the last one, then you could get a Call or the Claw, and that would get you 2 extra turns. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, this deck like this little soft lock of contamination is pretty cute.
Just going to attack in here for 1. And we got a Lyrist, so the Lyrist stayed in, which is very interesting.
So because I'm trying to think if there are any enchantments if he's just valuing like the 1/1 body that is more contamination or Cabal Therapy fodder.
But he definitely needs a way to be able to get this counterspell out of Alvaro's hand before he does really anything proactive.
That's true. And now Alvaro's at the point where he could even deploy Dreadnought and stifle it, and then still have counterspell backup. So, and if you're trying to resolve, because it's Boomerang, Annul, and is it actual counterspell, or what was the other card?
It was actual counterspell.
Okay. So if he's trying to resolve Contamination, he's got to deal with both Annul and counterspell. But I guess a Cabal Therapy would be good for that.
And there's the Dreadnought.
Okay. Yep. There's a Vision Charm.
And Charm. Okay.
So the Dreadnought will phase out, and I mean, so at this point, it's kind of like Naturalized and Pernicious Deeds. So it's a little bit better than it was before. He's tapping a bunch of mana. This is 5 mana. You got a Deranged Hermit.
Okay.
And that'll draw a counterspell. Okay.
Yep.
Guess you attack for 2? Do you leave the Herald back to block?
So he would need something else. Herald does get Scrapper, but he needs something else in order to survive. And Álvaro can always Boomerang the Dreadnought back to his hand if he wants.
Just at this point, like, you could just attack.
You could
Boomerang the Scrapper because
Yep. Yeah, that's the better play. So that's probably way.
Oh, he's gonna stifle the Wirewood Herald trigger, so he's not even gonna get the option of getting the.
I'm not sure if that's necessary, but it's definitely something you could do. Okay, got a Wall Roots.
So, with Kyle at 9, he can soak up. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
The Hibernation's there, and yeah, this is just a bloodbath. So like, I know, like, this is probably one of like the worst matchups for Kyle. Like, yeah. I mean, he at least he does have outs. Like, he could find like a Contamination lock. So, but in general, he just doesn't interact very well with the quick 12/12. So, I think he was kind of talking about before that he did not expect things to go this way, and I think we all had a little bit of hope because were very excited to see this FernGully deck. But yeah, this was not the matchup he was looking for in the quarterfinals, and it did not go his way. So,
sad.
Yeah, but I mean, like, people seeing that this deck went 7-1 in the Swiss, that like I wouldn't be surprised if people try and pick it up and see it, make some of the changes maybe that Kyle suggested, or kind of play around with it and see if this deck has a future in the pre-modern space. But yeah, when you're dealing with quick, efficient 12/12s, you kind of have to be prepared, and you have to expect some of the games to go poorly because of that. So
yeah, but still, I mean, yeah, big congrats to Kyle for taking it this far. I know I've certainly heard some pre-modern brewers be a little, pessimistic at times. You just be like, oh, it's too difficult to make, something work. They just get beat, by the top tier decks, the format. But yeah, you don't get here, to the top 8 of the Fall Brawl, by playing against bad decks. Kyle didn't get lucky here. He had a good plan. Okay, we do see the natural order package did come out, but yeah. So I think Kyle probably really benefited from the Brewers advantage, in the pod or the group rounds. But once the deck lists become open, it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. I am gonna unmute the players and see if they're chatting about things. So
yeah.
On your the last game, did you hit both cards off the Gush, or did you hit one on your draw step?
I knew that you had Cabal Therapy, so I didn't want to keep hand with Dreadnought, of course, because you are going to say that. So I would never keep a hand with Dreadnought against Cabal Therapy at all. If I draw one, I prefer to mulligan. So yeah, I think I play 2 or 3 cantrips in that game, including Gush, and I get the Gush and the Vision Shard, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I was just thinking,
from the Gush.
I Therapy named it, and then you had it rolled up, so I was wondering if you got it off the Gush or just on the draw step and then the Gush.
I think I drew the Wisdom Charm from, or the Stifle, I don't know, from the natural draw, and then I get the Dreadnought from the Gush.
Sweet. Yeah, I was like, I was hoping it was from the Gush because it would be sicker, but either way, it was going to be GG if you had it.
Yeah, it was a interesting match. I really like your deck. I think that contamination. I mean, I was really lucky that I was able to land and Dreadnought before you get the contamination because I couldn't do anything besides playing Gush, counter something extra. I couldn't like answer anything from the board anyway. So,
Right.
I think contamination could have got me. I'm not sure if you had the elf that destroys artifacts.
I do.
Main deck, right?
Yeah, I just never had it.
But the thing is that you search with the elf for the
Right.
enemy.
Yeah. Right. But it'd be summoning sick. So whenever I went to go search for it, I would die after casting it.
Yeah.
I unmuted them. I don't know
Okay.
if you have.
We weren't sure if you had us unmuted. We were just listening to you guys. Yeah. I think with the Herald, I don't think there was ever a spot where you could get the Scrapper because you just didn't have enough toughness or life to take another hit from the Dreadnought.
Yeah.
Now, Kyle, I did want to ask. Game 1, you mulliganed to 5. Were the first couple hands just unkeepable right there, or were you looking for just any type of interaction to be able to answer Dreadnought?
I was looking for interaction mainly, but because I kind of had a plan going in that I needed certain draw to get him, either an early contamination or a disruptive draw. But I tanked on the 7 because I had a bird and a spirit guide, and I could have had like a turn 2 natural order maybe. And then I wasn't sure if that was good enough even then, and then it would still get beat by a Daze or Spike. So I was like, I just need to stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first game was really interesting because I didn't have any counter spells and he didn't have any disruption. So we just played.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, like
kind of a game of chicken.
Looking at the rock list, well, quote unquote rock list, but you actually have like a decent game plan. Like the contamination lock, like if you just have a Wirewood Herald, like buys you, how many turns is it? If you have a mana elf and a Wirewood Herald and contamination, you get like 6 or 7 turns out of like contaminating, right?
Yeah, you can get the Herald itself.
Yep.
You know,
Herald into Herald into Herald into Herald into like Claw and Claw.
And then in those draws, you might hit another mana elf.
Okay.
Or yeah, if you brick, the worst case scenario is you get to Collar of the Claw to buy more draw steps. But hopefully in that time you'll hit like a Hermit or a Natural Order to go get Symbiotic Worm or something while they're locked out. So it's like a pseudo lock. 'Cause you get like, I don't know, like you said, like 7 or 8 draws worth of contamination. So if your deck's decently kind to you, on top of just, oh, I drew an Elvish Lyrist, you know, I'll just sack that now. Like you get a lot of redraws.
Yeah. Chad had asked the lack of Verdant Force. It seems to go well with like the contamination plan, and it's fine with Natural Order. Was that a card that you considered, or is it something that you tried and didn't like?
I had it, but I had it when I had full 4 Natural Orders in my list, but then I didn't like having the full 4. I just wanted it as like a decent draw to have sometimes, and then having 3 options was kind of annoying, and I wanted the option to have this with Cabal Therapy right away. And it just, in games, not that I tested this thoroughly, it just seemed to work out better most of the time when I was able to just get it and bin it and lock in the 7 tokens.
I did want to ask you about Elvish Aberration, and is that just basically a way to get a lot of green mana just off one body, or was there another reason that you're running them?
Yeah, it's a Herald target that also is kind of like a land slot, and it's another one of those cards that you can draw into. Like on the last Herald trigger, you can even go get that and play it. Then you have a 4/5 beater, and you can sack the other tokens while you beat down with it, or use it to continue to fix your mana through Contamination. It's just kind of like a decent hedge flex slot to instead of a 23rd land.
Well, I put good money on you being the first one to top 8 with an Elvish Aberration in any deck list right there. So
Sweet, I'll
that was
take that.
pretty
There might be a number of nonsense in here that top 8'd, so I'll take those.
Plague Witch was probably the first two. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's in there for other like, oh, they have a bird. What am I gonna do? Like, I can go get a Plague Witch, and then I'll win that battle.
The games that you won, like in the Swiss, were you more often winning with natural order or the Contamination lock, or is it a combination, or just depends on the matchup, or what is it?
Yeah, the unexciting answer is it depends on the matchup, but a lot of the natural order wasn't there for a nod for like goblins and Sly, just like go get into Shoba, and that's how I beat I think 2 goblin opponents, was just going and getting the Shoba. But I also had to Neshoba and Contamination lock a Goblin's opponent just because they had Sharpshooter and Siege Gang going. So a lot of times I had to roll up both combos to lock it up. But it seemed like a lot of the games were just grindy, like Herald dying and going getting a Caller of the Claw or a Hermit and just kind of grinding out like a typical rock advantage.
Okay.
Just kind of winning the long game.
That's
rather
beautiful.
than Contamination. Just wasn't always the MVP, but when it showed up, it was a blowout, of course. Just like they tap out for, I don't know, a Silver Knight into an elf and a bird, right? They're like, what can I do? And then you're just like, you can't play your spells anymore, and it's just kind of crazy that can happen.
I actually wanted to ask you, have you thought about using Diabolic Intent on this list?
I did. I had 1 or 2 of in the list, but it didn't seem like having that and Natural Order and Contamination and Cabal Therapy, I had enough bodies to sack to all these effects.
Okay.
So in a version of this deck that maybe lessens the Natural Order package, I think 1 or 2 Diabolic Intent would be great. But it just seemed like the bodies I would need to facilitate all that was too difficult. But not like I've tested everything to the umpteenth. So that was my initial idea behind that.
All right, Álvaro, we talked a lot to Kyle about his deck. His deck was new and exciting. We have seen Mono Blue Stiflenought.
So do you mean that mine is not exciting? And
in comparison, I would say that Kyle's deck is more exciting. But
I agree.
I do like the Mono Blue, and I feel like it is becoming more popular. And the more people that I talk to, they say that it is the best Dreadnought list. Have you played other Dreadnought versions, or would you agree that this is the best way to play Phyrexian Dreadnought?
I think that we have discussed this many times in Discord before, so I'm going to be very brief about it. I think that focusing on the Gush engine, basically Gush, Daze, Foil, gives you an edge compared to other Dreadnought builds. Of course, you can do the same with blue-black version, but I think that again, I think adding non-basics to this list makes Gush much better, so much worse, because you really lean on that. All my games I started with 2 lands, 2 islands, and that allowed me to play Gush anytime. Like if I only add something like Underground River or a swamp, that would force me to mulligan just because of that.
Okay.
Well, Álvaro, you've been on a tear lately. Won the September monthly, I believe it was, and now top 8,
Yes.
with this deck. And yeah, it's quite a run, to rival, any of the runs we've seen in Premodern.
Thanks. I think that this is a tier 1 at least deck. Not because I'm playing it, but because when I started playing it, I really feel like I mean, you just play Gush, then you foil Daze and do your stuff and just don't care about what they play because you play a 12/12 trample with protection. So it's I think it's so powerful. Like and we saw, let's say, we saw, for instance, the game from Tom Metelsky and Christian Wish, Wisner, and he he was against goblins, I think, and even he turn one, even if Christian had a goblin lucky turn one, and then 2 pal drivers and 1 siege gun commander. So that's the power of the deck. He won even against that,
Yeah.
which is like crazy hands.
And I'll add to his tear. He was in my pod for November, and he 6-0'd the pod, and 2-0'd me in the process. So he's 5-0'd me, not close with this deck. It's definitely nasty, and a deck that future nonsense for me might be trying to tune against.
Yeah, I was
just
say
for revenge.
The Dreadnought strategies are pretty good about like those wacky off the wall things because it kind of condenses the game. You don't have a lot of time if a Dreadnought comes down. So
No.
Yeah, I predict that people will start playing more snuff outs and that kind of things, like free spells crumble because of this. Like
okay.
they need to answer the Dreadnought as soon as possible, and for free and as cheap as possible too.
Snuff out's at the top of my list.
Yes, it's awesome and it's criminally underplayed in the format, I think.
It's too bad, yeah, Contamination doesn't turn them into swamps for you to be able to enable snuff out. That would
be
you know,
nuts.
yeah.
It's not Blood Moon.
Nah.
All right, I think that answers all the questions that I had and chat did. I want to thank both of you players for playing this, and congratulations for both of you for getting this far. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. If you guys want to say anything before we go, we can do that.
Just thank you again for hosting this. I know you've been busy, CubeCon and all other nonsense, so making this happen is you're a testament to the community. So I appreciate all you do, and
thank you.
I was happy to be a part of it. And if anyone has any ideas for this deck, please let me know. It's clearly just a brew, so I'm still a work in process. So let me know in Discord or whatnot. Thanks.
All right, and Álvaro will at least see you at least in the semifinals, so you'll definitely be back. So, is there anything else you want to say before we go, though?
No, I mean the same thing I said before the streaming. I really appreciate the time you take to create this content. I think the PSS was amazing, and I think that this is the best content for Premodern, at least in.
Thank you.
How can I say this? But anyway, it's awesome.
Thank you. All right, then we'll let our players go, and you can have a good night, and thank you. And then Mike and I will wrap things up.
All right, thanks. Good
night,
luck
guys.
on the rest, Álvaro.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Mike. So we got to see a quick match, unfortunately for our FernGully fans, but we got to see the power of Dreadnought and the streamlined mono blue version. Yeah, it was a cool match. Thanks for jumping in the booth with me and providing the insight. Yeah, like the way that it worked out, like just the contamination plus natural order. It was a dream come true for you. So,
except you invite me to see like some of my like favorite pet cards.
Yes.
Only to see that. Are you really trying to send me a message like to stop? Trying to reroute this stuff.
No, yeah. I mean, like it can be done. Other people are trying it, and so it kind of just shows that you can try something wild and pre-modern and do well with it. I'm not going to say it's going to happen every time, but the possibilities are there. So,
yeah, I have this like kind of list. The best cards that like no one's playing. In the format right there, and yeah, that's always a good place to start off. With brew ideas, and to trying to find a good shell. For them. I really enjoy cards which really alter the game plan, quite a bit. So, because we've seen like rock lists which throw like a braids in there or, something else, but it doesn't really change the overall game plan. But we got to see Kyle's deck. It really changed the overall, texture of the black-green deck. And yeah, I'm glad he made it this far. But yeah, sometimes, it's got to come to an end.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll wrap things up. We'll just thank everyone who was able to tune in. We will have more coverage of the Fall Brawl Top 8. I believe our next match is going to be tomorrow around 4 p.m. Eastern. I will get some posts out. I'm still getting some of the information for the players, and then I'll make like a consolidated post. I apologize that this doesn't come out earlier, but I'll at least before each match have a profile of everyone and have at least a deck image so that you get a preview of what's upcoming. But I think Rich Shea against Will Hurst will be our Saturday match. So looking forward to that. But again, Mike Arnold, thanks for joining us. I had a lot of fun. It was good to hear your insight on this matchup and these decks. So appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
And until next time, take care.